Hello everyone, my name is Serafi and I'm happy to meet you all. And welcome to my new series on YouTube, Duel Links Predictions. This is going to be a series inspired by my Vector video, which was very successful, thank you all for that, where I talk about characters that are upcoming to Duel Links, their cards, and predict what cards they might use based on cards and effects that they used in the anime, and tell you a little bit about the character as well, just so that you have kind of an idea. Because some of these characters that are left are pretty obscure. Okay, today we're going to talk about Lulu Obsidian. Lulu Obsidian is, of course, Shay's younger sister from the Xyz dimension in Arc 5, as well as the Xyz counterpart for Zuzu Boyle. So, what are some of the things you guys need to know about Lulu? Lulu and Rin, who is the synchro version of Zuzu, are very important to the storyline of Arc V, but they're both extremely obscure. Rather than being Lancers like Zuzu and Selena, who actively duel against enemies and try and bring an end to the conflict between the Fusion Dimension and the Xyz Dimension, Lulu is mostly just there as motivation for Shay and Yuto. And she starts the series captured. That's why Yuto comes to the Xyz dimension to begin with, which happens, I think, in as early as episode 7. So, the character does not shown almost at all. And she only duels twice in the entire show, which is less... That's really not very much screen time for what would be considered probably a main character. When you consider that even though she's a female Yu-Gi-Oh character and she's not like part of the main cast, even Anna Kaboom from Zexal is shown playing 3 times. And that's not to say that Lulu has a lot of on-screen time when she's not dueling either. She really doesn't. We don't even get to see her while she's in captivity, like I would usually expect in an anime, where it shows the character who's in captivity, it shows maybe how she interacts with her captors, it shows her, waiting for the person that's coming to rescue her. We don't get any of that. She doesn't show up until season 3. So there is a lot to expect from this release, but not a lot to go on. I'm a big fan of the Lyrilusc archetype myself, and I really look forward to Lulu's release. But I have to be realistic about what we're going to get and how effective it's going to be in Duel Links. So let's talk about it. The Lyrilusc archetype is very small, which means that it should do very well in Duel Links compared to in Master Duel. There are only 5 main deck monsters, which makes it pretty inconsistent in Master Duel, but in Duel Links, you could run 3 copies of all these cards, and that would be 15 cards out of 20. You'd have a pretty good chance of drawing a lot of them in your opening hand, which you really need. We need to talk about the cards that Lulu specifically used. So even though there's only 5 main deck monsters, she only used 3 of these. The primary monster that she used was Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow. If you control a Winged Beast type monster, you can special summon both this card and one level 1 Winged Beast monster from your hand. You can only use this effect of Lyrilusc Sapphire Swallow once per turn. A Wind Xyz monster that was summoned using this card on the field as Xyz material gains this effect. If it is Xyz summoned, you can target one Lyrilusc monster in your graveyard and attach it to the Xyz monster as material. That's really good. So it summons itself, and it summons another material, and then it attaches a third material from the graveyard. As you can see, Lyrilusc monsters are extremely focused on having a large number of materials, which is why I'm concerned about their value in Duel Links, because even though Lulu is only shown using the Lyrilusc cards 1 time because her second duel used a bunch of anime-only Parasite cards, she still Xyz summons her ace monster using 5 monsters on the field as material. Which is impressive, but that goes to show you how dependent the deck is. That even in the low-power anime, where people don't typically play at the top of their game, they still showed her summoning this monster with 5 materials. This is the intention of Lyrilusc, and the fact that we only have 3 spaces on the board makes me very worried about this deck. The second card that she is shown to have used quite often is Lyrilusc Cobalt Sparrow. If this card is special summoned, you can add one level 1 Winged Beast monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. A Wind Xyz monster that was summoned using this card on the field as material gains this effect. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. So it says this card on the field as material. So you have to have Cobalt Sparrow on the field to get this effect. You can't just attach it from the graveyard with Sapphire Swallow's effect. So having an Xyz monster that is just unable to be targeted by card effects is really nice. The ability to draw another level 1 Winged Beast monster from your deck, not a Lyrilusc monster, a level 1 Winged Beast, is very, very nice. All the Lyrilusc monsters are level 1 Wind Winged Beast monsters, but you can combine this deck with decks like Tri-Brigade, for example, and it works just fine. So this card is also very good, and it's a very good card to summon off of Sapphire Swallow, obviously, which is why she did it. So that's almost it. There's only one other main deck monster she's shown using besides Fusion Parasite, which we're not going to talk about because we already have that card. And that is a Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned from the hand, you can special summon one Lyrilusc monster from your hand or graveyard. You can only use this effect of Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler once per turn. So that effect is really good. Lyrilusc Turquoise Warbler is typically the starter for Lyrilusc decks. But you're going to need to have monsters in your hand or graveyard to use this card. It is going to be a heavy monster-focused deck. The boss monster that Lulu uses is called Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale. It is a rank 1 Winged Beast monster with 0 attack points and 0 defense points. And it can be made using 2 or more level 1 monsters. It gains these effects. This card gains 200 attack for each Xyz material attached to it. So you have to have a lot of materials attached to this card. If you make it normally with just 2 level 1s, it has 400 attack points, which is not useful. So you need to have it with 3, 4, 5 materials. That's what you're really aiming for. This card can attack directly. Great. So that's how we use it to win the game. You can just attack your opponent directly. It's very nice. While this card has Xyz material, it can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of materials it has. Okay, now we're talking. So if you make this with 2 materials, you can deal 800 damage. If you make it with 3 materials, you can deal 1800 damage. If you make it with 4 materials, you can do 3200 damage. And if you make it with 5 materials, you can do 5000 damage. So you want to make this card with at least 5 materials so that you can kill your opponent in a single turn. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you get to detach 1 material from this card. Until the end of the turn, Lyrilusc monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. Also, you take no battle damage. So that's a pretty decent effect. It's okay. You can use the effect, you can make this card going first, pass to your opponent and say, okay, you can't attack me, I can't be destroyed by battle, you can't destroy my monster with card effects, and I take no damage. That's fine, but the card can still be banished, it can still be flipped face down, it can still be returned to the hand. There are too many ways to remove Assembled Nightingale for it to be a good card to make going first. So, the other cards that Lulu explicitly used are 2 spell cards. One is Lyrilusc Bird Strike, which is, if you control a Lyrilusc monster, negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. That is very, very good. That is essentially Dark Ruler no more, but with no drawbacks. But you do have to control a monster, and that's kind of one of the drawbacks of it, really. This card is in Master Duel and no one plays it, even though Dark Ruler no more sees a ton of play. And the reason why is because you typically don't want to summon monsters before you negate the entire field, especially if you can't do it as a quick effect. People will play Forbidden Droplet because they can take their monsters off the field if they need to with Forbidden Droplet. But Bird Strike requires you to have a Lyrilusc monster out, which probably means that you've already activated its effect. So that means that you've already walked into at least 1 negate, if there's a negate to be had. So Bird Strike is not as good as it looks, but it's still probably in Duel Links pretty decent. This card can turn off cards like Dingirsu, it can turn off cards like Yubel the Ultimate Nightmare. Obviously you're going to attack directly in most cases, but there might be some monsters that you need to negate the effects of, so this card can be useful. I don't know how useful it will be, but if we can set it with a skill, I certainly won't be looking down on that as an option. The other card that she used is called Lyrilusc Bird Song, which says, when a Lyrilusc monster you control inflicts battle damage to your opponent, special summon 1 level 1 monster from your hand in defense position. That card was never printed, so it's probably not coming, considering we have so many other cards that could come in that place. When she was possessed by the Fusion Parasite, she also fusion summoned using Lyrilusc Independent Nightingale, which is a combination of a Lyrilusc assembled Nightingale and a Lyrilusc monster. If this card is fusion summoned using an Xyz monster on the field as fusion material, whose original name includes a Lyrilusc, you can increase this card's level by the number of Xyz materials that monster had. This card gains attack equal to its level times 500, unaffected by other cards' effects, and once per turn you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to this card's level times 500, which would be halved. That is an okay card, but it's not good enough at all. Fusion Parasite, for those of you that don't know, allows you to fusion summon if the card is special summoned. And it doesn't have a way to special summon itself normally. And Lulu has no cards that have synergy with polymerization at all. So she can't search polymerization, she doesn't draw polymerization. It's not like Lunalights, who have Black Sheep that can just discard itself to draw polymerization, or Wolf, which can fusion summon on its own, or Lunalight Fusion being an R-type fusion spell. If your only way of playing the card is to hard draw polymerization, it's not good. And I don't imagine they're going to give her a fusion skill, even though she used the card in the anime. I really don't think that they're going to care too much. They might not even give us this card, even though it's one of the cards she explicitly used. They might just not give it to us, because it's so outside of her scope of support. It's an unaffected card, which is annoying, and it just burns. So this card's toxic. It does have 1,000 attack points to start with, which is nice. But, yeah, I don't see this card being useful. I don't think you would use Assemble Nightingale to make it, because Assemble Nightingale, you gain the ability to be unaffected, but you lose the ability to attack directly. And even if you made Assemble Nightingale with 5 materials, that only means this monster has 3,500 attack points. And you have to play Polymerization first. So I guess, like, you could theoretically use Polymerization to make this card as a going first card, get a little bit of burn damage in, and then have an unaffected card with decent attack points. But you have to have Polymerization and another Lyrilusc, so that means you have to... That's 2 cards out of your 4-card hand that you have to save, and then you make this card. So probably you would only have a 2-material Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale, and it's only got 2,500 attack points, which is not bad. A 2,500 attack point monster, it's unaffected by card effects, but it's not good enough. So yeah, I don't see them even giving us this card. I do think that there will be some other Lyrilusc cards introduced, though. I don't think that they're just going to give us the cards that she used, because the deck itself would not function just with Assembled Nightingale. So the other cards that are in the archetype, we have a Lyrilusc Beryl Canary, which is a level 1 Winged Beast. If this card is in your hand, you can target one Lyrilusc monster in your graveyard, special summon both this card and that monster. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Xyz monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. And a Wind Xyz monster that was summoned using this card on the field gains this effect. This card gains 200 attack points. Also, it cannot switch control. So you would play this card, and it brings back your Cobalt Sparrow, and then uses its effect to draw another level 1 Winged Beast. Then you can normal summon that Winged Beast, and then you have 3 materials on the field to go into an Xyz summon. So this is a pretty good card. It also, since it brings back Cobalt Sparrow, you can get the cannot be targeted effect as well. So this is a great card going for your turn 2 play, and it will be very important for the Lyrilusc strategy, which is why I think that it's probably going to be introduced as like an ultra rare, I'm guessing. The last card from the main deck is Lyrilusc Celestine Wagtail. If this card is special summon, you can add one Lyrilusc spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one Lyrilusc Xyz monster you control and attach this card to it as material. You can only use this effect once per turn. So Celestine Wagtail is extremely important because it allows you to bypass the restriction of having only 3 zones on the field. So I definitely think this card will come because you put it in the graveyard somehow. Maybe there'll be a skill that starts with it in your graveyard, and that way you can attach it as material so that you can go ahead and get at least 4 materials on the monster, which is really important. Like, 3 materials is not good enough for any of the Lyrilusc Xyz monsters. So you definitely want the ability to have multiple Xyz materials. Wagtail is a way to enable that, even if we only have 3 zones. So I definitely think Konami is going to add this card. The other Xyz monsters that they have, we will most likely get Promenade Thrush because it's not very good. Promenade Thrush requires 2 or more level 1 monsters. It gains 500 attack for each material attached to it. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, target 1 spell or trap your opponent controls, and shuffle it into the deck. At the start of the damage step, if another monster you control battles, you can detach any number of materials from this card, and that monster you control gains 300 attack for each material detached until the end of the turn. So this card is not very strong, and it has synergy with non-Lyrilusc decks. So you can make it in a deck that uses a bunch of level 1s, and then it can just buff another monster that battles. So that's kind of a cool effect, and I do think that Thrush is a safe card to add. It probably would not even be a super rare. This card would probably just be a rare. And the more monsters that you could put in the extra deck, the better. So I do think that they'll just give us this card as like an option. That brings us to the other two Xyz monsters. We have Lyrilusc Recital Starling and Lyrilusc Ensemblue Robin. I do not think Recital Starling is going to come to the game. Not yet, at least. This card is an extremely powerful search card. It allows you to detach one material from this card to add a level 1 Winged Beast monster from your deck to your hand, and that's a soft once per turn. So you can make this card, and then you detach a material, you search another Lyrilusc card so that you can make more materials on the field, you make another one, and you can search again, and then you have 2 level 1s on the field, which allows you to go into Utopic Draco Future. And I do think Utopic Draco Future is a card that we will get very late in the game because it is a Utopic card, and the Utopia archetype is extremely popular in Japan. So I have no reason to think that they will deny us a signature Utopia boss monster. But that means they'll probably be hesitant to give Lyrilusc easy access to it because it's not really in theme for them. So this card is very, very strong, even without the ability to go into Utopic Draco Future on turn 1. The ability to search your deck twice is really, really good. I mean, the fact that this card is a soft once per turn makes it just absurd, as opposed to a hard once per turn for searching. So, not really in theme with anything that Konami does. This card has gotten limited in the TCG before, so it's just not a card that I see them adding to Duel Links. The last Xyz monster, though, this card I think actually has a good shot of coming with Lulu's release. That card is Lyrilusc Ensemblue Robin. It gains 500 attack for each material attached to it, and if your opponent special summons a monster except during the damage step, you can detach one material from this card, then target one of those special summon monsters and return it to the hand. That is not once per turn. So as long as you have materials, you can continue to bounce monsters your opponent special summons. This is very similar to Evil Swarm Nightmare, which is a card that sees a lot of success in Duel Links, especially going first. However, Evil Swarm Nightmare has a tendency to clog the board, which makes it more disruptive, but it also is limited to 2 procs per turn. Ensemblue Robin theoretically could hit 4 if you were somehow able to get a Lyrilusc in the graveyard and then attach it with Sapphire Swallow. So 4 bounces could shut down a lot of decks, including Orchest. So I do think that they will probably give Ensemblue Robin to Lyrilusc because we can't choose to go second. Assemble Nightingale is not good enough, and there aren't enough non-Lyrilusc rank 1s that they could give us that would allow us to have a good turn 1. So I think that Konami, because they want Lyrilusc to see play, will give us Ensemblue Robin on release so that Lyrilusc has an option to play on turn 1. And that's cool. The other effect of this card, if it's sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can target one other Lyrilusc monster in the graveyard and add it to your hand. So it's great making it turn 1. You just start by bouncing a bunch of cards, then if your opponent manages to send it to the graveyard, you just get your Beryl Canary back, and then next turn you pop off. So this is a card that I look forward to seeing. Bird Strike probably going to come. The other Lyrilusc spells and traps, let's talk about them. Bird Call. Take one Lyrilusc monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Then you can special summon one Lyrilusc monster with a different name from your hand. You can only activate one Lyrilusc Bird Call per turn. It's a cool card. It's a search card. The main Lyrilusc deck that has 40 cards in it plays this at 3. I don't know that it will be as valuable in a 20-card format because you will open more Lyrilusc cards without needing to search them. So I feel like you would probably want to run more monsters and then back row, as opposed to more consistency cards, especially if we don't get Ensemblue Robin. If we don't get Ensemblue Robin, Bird Call is just going to be a worthless card, because going first, you're going to want to set 3 and pass. So I don't even know that they'll bother giving us this card, honestly. They might. If they do, it would probably be played and then found to be not good. Lyrilusc Bird Sanctuary. You can target 2 Winged Beast Xyz monsters you control. Attach one of those cards to the other as materials. If you control an Xyz monster with 3 or more materials, you can draw 1 card. This is a card that could allow us to potentially get 5 materials on a Assembled Nightingale without any sort of skill assistance. You could make a Thrush with 2 materials, and then an Assembled Nightingale with 2 materials, and then you just attach the Thrush to the Assembled Nightingale. The Thrush also is a material, so then Assembled Nightingale has 5 materials. Would you be able to do that with only 4 cards in your opening hand? Maybe. You do get to draw a card going second, and that's when it really matters, so 5 cards, potentially. If we had a skill that allowed us to start the game with Lyrilusc Bird Sanctuary on the field, maybe this card would be good. It is the primary target that you search off of Celeste Wagtail. I feel like they'll probably give us this card because it's necessary for the deck to function. Maybe this card will be in a box. And the last card is Lyrilusc Phantom Feathers. It's a trap card. Target 1 Lyrilusc monster you control. The attack of all monsters your opponent currently controls become that monster's current attack. Also, their level and ranks become 1. When an opponent's monster declares an attack on your Lyrilusc monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Your monster's attack becomes that opponent's monster's attack until the end of the turn. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this card is really, really bad. It doesn't see any play in the main game because who cares about battle? But battle traps do see some play in Duel Links, and bad cards also get printed all the time in Duel Links. So this card could potentially get printed. I don't see any reason to stop it from coming to the game. I mean, she didn't use it, but the deck is already pretty small. So it's either going to be a situation where they don't give us a box at all and they just give us drops, in which case we might see just the 3 monsters that she used and then maybe Bird Strike and Assembled Nightingale. But I feel like Assembled Nightingale is a good enough card to sell a box off of. There are enough people who would want to attack directly 5 times for 5,000 that they could put this as a UR in a box and people would buy it. So if that's the case, then I imagine this card will be like a rare card in that box and it'll be fine. Okay, that's my thoughts on the Lyrilusc deck. I don't think there will be any non-Lyrilusc cards added. You can see cards like Where Art Thou in the deck, which is already in the game, so it's not going to be added. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Let me know what you guys want to see moving forward. I hope you guys enjoyed this commentary. My name is Serafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.